We are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Did you know that the first step in genealogy that everyone tells you to do is kind of not true? Did you know that? Yes, I learned that from a very, very highly regarded genealogist. What do they always say? They always say when you start doing research, what? You need to interview your family. Guess what? It's not really true. You need to have a good conversation. And that's what our special guest today, Curt Witcher, is going to talk to us about having a good conversation. And our guys are back with these ticks. They just love to tick off your ancestors. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it seems like they're having luck. Like the more they tick them off, the more they actually find them. So let us join them in ticking off our ancestors. So I want to welcome you to Genealogy Quick Start. I am your host, Shamele Jordon. You can watch Genealogy Quick Start on YouTube, Facebook, and Philly Cam. We are a Philly Cam show. And I appreciate all the subscribers, all the followers and viewers out there. Welcome so much for being here. And guess what? Where are you at? I see you guys coming in. Where are you at? Let us know you're here, whether live or in replay. We love to see that you're here. And genealogy groups, the heart and soul of research. Let us know your group. Maybe there's someone here who doesn't have a group, and we all need to have a genealogy home. So let's talk about our topics today. We're going to go in and meet our guys, bring them in. I know you all are waiting for what makes me so glad. I have so much fun with these guys. I wait I wish I could be with you guys every week. Jim Beidler, editor and columnist, as well as Michael John Neill of Genealogy Tip of the Day. Michael, I heard you talking about giving a webinar. Is this one for Genealogy Tip of the Day?
Well, yeah, pretty much. A self-hosted one. You can't see the air quotes, but a self-host looks like little bunny rabbits. A self-hosted.
So how do people get to these hosted webinars for Genealogy Tip of the Day?
They're always announced on the website and on the Facebook page, so they'll be announced there, so they can see them when we're going to have one.
Hey, if you want more Michael, go check him out. You never invited me to come on to one of your webinars or Jim, have you been on to one of his webinars? Did you even know that he gives webinars?
I knew he gave them because I get repeated emails over and over again. Where is that unsubscribe button?
It's down there at the bottom. But federal law, it's down there.
But no, Michael's
go ahead.
Michael's not the type that lets the co-stars on. He is the star of the
show. Now we know the truth. Okay. So, Michael, what's up with this ticking off a second time? Like, what are we talking about differently with this confirming ticking off your ancestors?
Today with ticking off, it's about Rocky Mountain spotted fever. No, in this discussion, it's more in the nature of, do you have the right person? The problem is there's so little information in the pre-1850 census enumerations that, particularly if the name is common or even not so common, it's important that you try as best you can to make certain that you have the correct person. So we're going to kind of be looking at analyzing that family structure a little bit more today to make certain that, especially if your person moved around a lot, which people might have, that you've got, as best you can determine, you got the right bunch of people.
Okay. Like it. It sounds good. So, Jim, what do you have any interesting census record tips or factoids? Because we know that, it's more than just looking at the record. It's understanding why the record was created, why they have asked different questions. And, so what do you have for us? Do you have a tip or a myth?
Well, I can give you a tip and a myth. So,
okay.
But the the tip, and this is building on last week or 2 weeks ago, and that's what a lot of this is this is now the intermediate course in ticking off. We've gone through the beginners, and one of those things is pay very, very close attention to the age ranges, because they're in some of the censuses, in addition to them having a full gamut, from 0 age to a 45 and over range, they then have categories that aggregate some of the ages, because they were interested in men of military age. They were interested in older adults. And very important is the phrasing of these things. Is like the youngest category for some is under 5 years. And I know sometimes in shorthand we will represent that as 5 and under. Well, those aren't exactly the same thing. Yeah, and we really should be cognizant of that, because in one of the censuses it's under 5, and then at least 5 and under 10. Which again we sometimes shortcut it to say 5 to 10. And of course, not that these ages don't betray us a lot of times, that people aren't in exactly the right category, but we should at least start from the standpoint of, if it was filled out accurately, what it would be. So that's my tip. As far as a myth, now I don't have a myth about the tick mark censuses, but one of the things that annoys me most of all that I see.
Okay, I'll be gone for half an hour. Go ahead.
Is when somebody says sloppily, well, the 1890 census burned up in a fire.
Oh, don't say that around. Oh my goodness, we have a special guest who might knock you out if you say it burned in a fire. So tell us the truth.
I would never say that.
Who said
there was a fire? It did damage the 1890 census, but it was the mishandling of it afterwards that resulted in it sometime in the 1930s. Nobody's even exactly sure when they finally trashed the paper enumerations, because they had done nothing to preserve them. They just kind of stood around in a circle like, well, I don't know. And so that to me the significant difference is the destruction of the census was an avoidable disaster, even what had been damaged by the smoke and the fire. For the most part, if they had done some preservation, most of that would still be with us.
Would have it.
So anyway,
and it's mostly destroyed, because in some places it's available.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes it looks really crappy, but sometimes it looks fine. So just check it out. So I want to definitely look at all these folks here today. I'm so excited to see you. Number one is Tammy. You are making this regular. I'm nice to see you, Tammy, out in Atlanta. Gary Franklin in Toledo. Angela Allen in Houston. We have Barbara out in Las Vegas. Maria Capaldi says, hey. And she hangs out with Curt all the time. Lucky lady. And we have Denise Payne back again from the Netherlands. Hey, Renata, how are you? In physical therapies. So I hope you're doing well. I hope it works out for you. Hey, Dean Henry in Philly. Joe, I saw you sending out the newsletter. Appreciate you. Hello, Lisa in Atlanta, and Paula in Philly. Dr. Alfred Brothers at Fort Wayne, how are you? And Wayne and Grace Ann from Magnolia, great to see you. Hello, Benita Gail Gibbs from North Carolina. Hey, Elaine, did I miss Renee Jones up there? Hey, Renee. And Wanda Looney from Alabama. Hi, Wanda. And Quintilla from Cleveland. And Maria is now saying where she is. which we know
She's a
is
devoted fan, so
the
we
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So, you guys ready to get started with confirming your ticked off ancestors? All right, so let's get going. And anyone who has not put where you are, please do so. We'd like to know where you are and your genealogy group as well. So, step one for confirming your ticked off ancestors is to create an ancestral profile. I didn't use your cool term, excuse me.
I
An
noticed
avatar.
Avatar,
So
yeah.
explain to us what exactly this means.
Well, basically, we're trying to confirm we got the right person or the right family. And so for these individuals, we want to create written down so we can see it, name, approximate age, or when they were born roughly, where they should have been living, how many would have been in their household. If we're looking at pre-1850 census records, we don't need to have as much of the detail as we would need for 1850 and after, because that information is not in the census. It's good to know those other things, but occupation, birthplace, those questions aren't asked in the census. So using that as a comparison is kind of a moot point.
Right.
To be really honest with you.
Okay, so that you have your avatar all together, and so now you're saying we want to, choose a census year, and
right.
obviously you've chosen a family.
And to quickly add on the avatar one last time, or one more thing, given the time period, you might not have an exact date of birth for individuals. So you may have to, it's okay if you have to approximate, especially if you've got, in New England, there's a lot more records. So it's a little easier to get a better fix on a birth year. But once we get to other areas of the United States, it's not as easy to do that. So you may have a range of years for your birth. But we'll go ahead and move on to step 2, because I see that's on the screen.
Okay, so step 2 is to go ahead and choose a census year. And then moving on to step 3 is to then estimate the household demographic. So is this the same, or
it's a little bit bigger than the avatar, but to think about who probably, and I realize in certain situations you're not going to know this. That's why you're doing the research. I understand that. But if you've got some of this information, if 1830 is the year you want to find Johann Schnifferman, then think about who likely is going to be in his household, a wife, and about how old she would be, and the same thing for how many children and what their age ranges would likely be. Of course, there could be niece or nephew or a hired man or whatever in the household that throws those totals off, but you've got to start with what you have and go from there. Keeping in mind it won't match perfectly what you think should be there.
Right.
All the time.
And if you have knowledge of the parents of the head of the household and the wife, whether they're still living, just make at least a mental note of that, that they may end up being in the household too.
Well, I say to make no mental notes. When in doubt, write it out. What's in your head can be forgotten. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that ties into one of our examples today.
Yes, that's really good. So let's move on to step 4, which is then to locate possible ancestors in the census. So let's take a look at one of your examples. And who do we have here? Let's see. Okay,
this is from Delaware County, Ohio. This is George Wickheiser, and this is an 1830 census. It's the right person. You look at we kind of cut the what the tick marks mean in this example out, but this is a young couple with looks like a small boy and 3 small girls. Looking at the tick marks there, you got that's probably the wife, and then the two daughters, a little slightly older daughter probably, and then the wife or the mother. And again, that's conjecture. That there could be a niece or nephew floating around in there too. But that's the household enumeration based on 1830. And in this example, we're kind of focused on the parents for reasons we'll see in a little bit. But that's one I know is him in 1830. And using that, I kind of got an age range for George and for his unnamed wife. We're assuming is the oldest female there.
And what I love here, that what you said is, we don't know any relationships This is just ages in the household, so no assumptions.
You
No
know, I mean,
assumptions.
I know this as a husband and wife and the kids, but it could very easily just be an older brother. Parents are dead, and he's got his brothers and I mean, brothers and sisters living with him. For all we know, you
Exactly.
don't know. You don't know.
So this is him in 1830,
1830.
and then we move to him. What's this telling us here?
Well, this is 1840, and
Mhm.
it's the same name. And when we look at the children, they've progressed like no one has died. They've had a few new ones, but they've progressed 10 years. But then the two with the arrows there, it's a much older male and a much older female, and then there's a male and a female that are the appropriate age progressions of George and his presumed wife, and that's an anomaly. And then when we look at I forget if we got an image of 1850 or not, but 1850, the enumeration for George and his wife has an age that is consistent for the husband and wife, that is consistent with the oldest. There we go, for the oldest people from 1830. And so what it looks like in 1840, this is the way you got to look at everything. What it looks like in 1840 is somebody's, most likely parents, have moved in with them in 1840 for one reason or another, and then they're out of the household by 1850, and they're not in the household in 1830. But looking at the ages of the children, they progress 10 years like they should. There are some new ones that are there, born in the last 10 years of the census, but those older female, the older male, I know who they are. I was as sure as I can be. They're George's parents. And then back in 1850, then it's the older ones are not there, and it's George and his wife aged appropriately throughout the three enumerations that we've got. But you've got to look at it carefully. If I just looked at the 1840 by itself and didn't look at George in other years, I might draw some very incorrect conclusions from that.
Yeah, who are those people? Okay. Love this. Love that. I love that. All right. So are we ready to move on to the next step?
I think we got the other. Do we have the other people? The other example?
Let's see.
And while you're looking at that, yeah, it really does show how putting these censuses not in isolation, but putting them together, three in a row, makes your research a whole lot stronger than any single one.
And how this came about while Shamele's looking for that is briefly those parents that are unnamed, because that's how it was in those census records. They're there in 30, they're there in 20, they disappear in 40, and then they're named in 1850. And the parents had sold their farm, 1830s, and then by the 1850s, whoever bought their farm had lost it, and it went back to the parents, and they moved back to the farm. But by 1840, they owned no real estate, and so they're living based on the census and the land, out of the records we're not going to look at. They're living with George in 1840 because they have no land or no farm.
And these are
the dude that buys it loses it, and so the older couple here end up back on their farm and enumerated in 1850, but they're gone they're not really gone in 1840. They're hiding out with George.
They're with George.
And his wife, most likely.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Love that. Is this the one you were looking for?
Right. This is the other one to help determine if you got the right.
This is step 5.
And
so step 5 is, so that was step 4 is to look them up. And the step 5 you were saying was to determine if this is your ancestor or not. So who are we looking at here?
These are William and Rebecca. I cut Newman's their last name, but I cut that off. But using from 50 and 70, I took those enumerations just to get a birth year range. These are people who were born in Kentucky, where we ain't never heard no such thing as a birth record at this time period. So the census is as good as I'm going to get for an approximation when William and Rebecca were born. And of course, I'm lucky. These are fairly consistent, but they're not a perfect match, and they're never really a perfect match. But they're pretty consistent. I use those. That goes back to building that profile avatar, if you will, of those individuals. And then I backtracked that because I wanted to get them in 1840, but it's like a lot of genealogy. Start with more recent and work your way a little bit earlier. So I use that to get a rough idea of their year of birth from those enumerations. And then the problem was William Newman is not the most unusual name. It's not as bad as John Smith, but
Right.
there's several dudes that have that same name. And I also looked at the family structure. I think there should be one more image there, if memory serves.
I love this table.
And this is where I made a table because I just like to make tables and charts for a variety of reasons. But I went through
you documenting your findings. This is after you've created these tables. You've kind of correlated the different censuses together. And now you're taking this is like a spreadsheet, it looks like.
Exactly. And what I did, these were the William Newmans in Indiana, because I was pretty sure he was in Indiana based on a search of Ancestry or Family Search or what have you. But these are the William Newmans that I found. And I put them in a chart, as you can see, the names, where they were at in 1840. And then I was kind of focused on the oldest male and female to kind of say, is this my person or is this not my person? How reasonable is that?
You're trying to confirm the same name. Gotcha.
Right. And so I always like to, if I eliminate somebody as being my person, I know Jim said make a mental note, but I can't find my car keys a lot of the time. So I want to write that down. And there's two reasons I think to write those kind of things down. One, so you remember, there's a lot of reasons, but two main reasons. One, so you remember it later so you don't forget. And two, if for some reason my profile or my avatar that I made for William and Rebecca was wrong, or I had to correct it or whatever, I can go back and look at what I previously thought and use an awful lot less time.
Yes.
But the comments there were my reasons. The bottom three were not him. Ages were wrong for the most part. And in one case, the geography was also
like geography. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
But I think whenever we'll say we got our person, but if I eliminate people, I like to track that down. It
saves time because you work all of that time. You say, how many times do you ask yourself the exact same question? Mm-hmm. And then you're like a dog with a bone and you get the answer and you're like, didn't I do this before?
Mm-hmm. And you find it, maybe you find it, maybe you don't, but you've been down that path before. And it's not a good use of your time.
It's deja vu all over again.
Exactly. And this way, the main reason I like it is if I change what I know about the person, because I find more recent records that are more whatever, then I can go back and it's easier for me to reevaluate those conclusions if I've written them down. You don't have to write a novel. Your grammar can be off. Just get your thoughts in there and your reasons in there. If that's what you need to see.
And where do you guys keep this? Do you just keep them in files? Do you put them in your lineage software? Like once you define what you believe the names of the ticks are, do you put it in your Roots Magic or Family Tree Maker? How do you keep track of that so you're not constantly looking for this tick?
Well, I would put it in my software. I also like to put these things in a massive Word document for each person or each couple. And then I can put I can copy and paste images in there. This is not the 1990s anymore. I can copy and paste those images and put them in there. No, it's not. And I can put more importantly, I can put my conclusions and my analysis in there. And I can see those. The summary I would put in my software, and you can copy and paste some of the analysis too. But I like to have it in a Word document because sometimes that's faster for me to go in and modify and read and what have you, than try to pull it out of the software.
Yeah, and I agree with software. I mean, but also what Michael's saying to have a more of a free-form written conclusion, just in a word processing program.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because especially in cases like this where you're having to do there's quite a bit of verbiage and should be quite a bit of thought thrown in there.
Yeah.
Then it's just easier to freeform it and then copy and paste into your software if you want to in the notes. But for me, that's a better way to handle it.
Yeah. Well, and especially, if you're really wanting to adhere to the genealogical proof standard, that final step is a written conclusion, a well thought out and reasoned conclusion, and software isn't necessarily that adaptable to that. So
No, and the last thing about doing it that way, there may be times where you're not really certain what the conclusion is. Sometimes you're never really certain.
Right.
And your software kind of wants you to, what is their relationship? When were they born? And I know you can put ranges on when they were born, or maybe whatever with their birthplace, but it's hard. You can't put maybe was the father, maybe was the mother. You know what I mean? You can't do that quite like, and your verbiage in your Word document or whatever program you use can indicate your tentative conclusion if that's what is appropriate.
And folks, this is a math guy telling you that. Oops.
Yeah.
Well, it all goes down to, if you want to get any partial credit, show your work.
Good line. Good line.
You set me up for that. I tell you, you set me up for that one.
I do my best, buddy.
That's really cool. One thing I like to do with my ticks is I like to do, and I got this from the BCG guide, and this isn't for certified people who are getting paid. Do your research like you're getting paid to do it as well. Your family deserves that, right?
Yep.
I like to do what they call a document analysis. And so that would be, each census would have its own, like you say, Word file where you're asking specific questions for every document. So I like this. I learned a lot. So let's talk about what the steps were for confirming your ticked off ancestors. Step 1 is to create an ancestral profile. Step 2 is to choose a census year. Step 3, estimate the house demographics. Step 4, locate possible ancestors in the census. And then step 5, determine if this is actually your ancestor. And step 6, document your findings. So that was fun. Did you guys enjoy that? Do you guys have questions for Jim and Michael about those tips? Have you guys heard any myths that you want to bust? Put it in the chat, and maybe if we have some time, we will get into it. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you at the end.
On the flip side.
See you on the flip side. All right, hold on one second. Here we go. I am so excited to announce that we have Curt Witcher here today. Curt is such a cool guy. For someone who has been in the genealogy game and he's known everyone and he's so esteemed, he's so down to earth, and you could just talk to him about anything. So I'd like to welcome today. I got to remember titles. I apologize to all my previous guests. I say no titles. I had Judy Russell on here. I didn't put that she was a JD, CG, nothing. But I'm going to tell you about Kirk. He is, before he gets here, because he's going to be shaking his head. You don't have to do that. He is the manager of the Genealogy Center, director of special collections at the #1 genealogy place in America. And in America, if it's #1 in America, guess what? It's #1 in the world. Let's welcome. Isn't that true, Curt? Every championship amongst Americans is a world championship.
That's what we like to think anyway. It's so awesome to be here. Thank you so much.
How are you, Curt?
Doing well. And it's just a privilege to spend some time with you.
And you guys have, I try not to date the show, but you guys have not basically closed. You're just still welcoming in genealogists.
We are. And thank you for that. Noticing that we take a lot of effort to make things clean and disinfected. We welcome people, and whatever your comfort level is, if you want to hit us up virtually, we do Zoom and phone and all the tricks to communicate with you virtually. If you want to come use the collection, oh my goodness, Shamele, these are the best of times because not a lot of people are here. So
I think Chicago was recently there. They took a trip, or they're on their way there.
They're on their way
to Chicago.
This weekend. Yeah, they're on their way this weekend. Yeah. And
I wish I could be with them. Is Cindy's open? Is the diner, that little teeny diner, open?
They moved it, but yes, it is. Yes, it is.
They moved it. Can you walk there from the
Yes,
library?
you can still
Oh,
walk there. It's a half a block further, but it's okay.
and is it still? Did they move the whole building? Is it still little?
They moved the whole thing. You're not going to take apart, a historic landmark, unofficial historic landmark. Yeah, they moved the whole thing.
I cannot wait to come back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to have that number one dish at Cindy's, which is garbage. All right, guys, let's get started with this. Is an amazing quick start. And I learned a lot. I don't know if you could tell by my face when you told me like this idea. It's a great idea. And it's very timely. And I said that we're always told to interview. And you're saying, have a good conversation. So tell us about this, Kirk.
Oh, absolutely. I so enjoy the fact that we talked about conversation rather than interview. A lot of things are sort of perspective in our mind, like what we've heard, what we've experienced. I don't know many people that are like jumping up and down saying, I get to have an interview, I get to do an interview, but oh, Shamele, I really like the concept of, let's back it up a little bit. We just want to have a really enjoyable conversation. And I think we family historians, we genealogists, we love to converse about our families, sometimes to the annoyance of our families. If we can have a conversation rather than an interview, we gain so much more and we have a more enjoyable time. I mean, after all, it is about the experience, right?
We do. I used to always say, don't do the wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Like when I first started doing genealogy, I was all over people and I was just like, the light was on them. And why don't you remember who your grandparents are and their maiden name? Like, why don't you know? But Kirk, you're going to smooth me out even a little bit more here with your quick start. So let's get started with step one. Yeah. Well, first, Kirk, I forgot to ask you this. Sure. What's your 1 minute genealogy origin story? How'd you get started and how did you know you were addicted?
Great question. And I'll squeeze it into a minute. It's two-pronged. I'll admit it. I'm a history nerd. I've always loved history. As a little kid, I read biographies like drinking a glass of water. So I just loved biographies. And I love why is this street named this? Why is this park named this? Why are these family names? And why did people settle here? I was just very inquisitive about how did this get here? And then secondly, and as importantly, my parents did not like to talk about anything to do with their family. So you know what that does to a kid? It's like, what are they hiding? What can I know? So that was just like igniting a fire. Like, I'm going to find out. I guess I don't feel like jumping up and down excited about it, Shamele, but I did take some pleasure in telling them things they didn't think I would know over the years. So that's what lit the fire. And then probably a few years ago, I really just, again, it was an aha moment. Like I should have known this all along, but it's all about the power of story. Oh my goodness. Story can change people's lives. It's amazing.
It really is amazing. And Kirk, I congratulate you on enjoying telling people stuff that they didn't know. Because sometimes, when you hit a nerve, like New Jersey has all of their marriage indexes online. And, in the 60s and 70s, and I saw cousins getting married and I started calling people, hey, I just saw a marriage. Who's this? And you know that you're hitting a button when you ask a question and they ask you a question instead of answering your question. So you were a fun little kid, weren't you?
Yeah, that's a term we can use. Yeah, I like that one better than some I've been called. So yeah.
All right, let's get going with step one, which is choose a subject. Yeah. Right.
And that sounds really basic, but when you're doing that, again, you had a great lead into this. Don't necessarily do someone you want to interview. Choose someone you would enjoy having a conversation with. That will make it flow so much smoother, so much easier. So that's really consequential. Pick someone you enjoyed having a conversation with.
Yes, and definitely I learned early that don't just interview family members,
Right.
because family members might not tell you those secrets that maybe the neighbors or friends of the family might tell you. So you want to balance your subjects as well, right?
Excellent point. You know that whole thing about fans?
Oh yeah.
That applies here too.
Yes,
Friends,
yes.
associates, and neighbors.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree. Fan club. We got to have that fan club and cluster. Don't have me saying, yeah, clusters too. So let's talk about step 2. And this is my favorite step. And I didn't even think about this, is arrange a time and a place. And that's Jim. Oh, I forgot. That's Jim Beidler's crosshairs of genealogy, kind of. So talk to us about this. And we actually have a great graphic for it too.
Sure. So, again, this may sound really simple, really pedestrian, but one, we're all busy. So plan ahead for arranging a time. If you know you don't have like the entire week next week to have a conversation, offer, hey, Tuesday afternoon and Thursday evening are just free on my calendar, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. So
it's nice.
You narrow it before you start just bantering back and forth. I've seen so many people say, I'm free all week. So someone says, okay, I'll pick a time easy for me. You pick Wednesday at 7. Oh, well, I have choir then. Well, then you're not free all week. So it takes it out of that conversation, that easy flowing conversation. So easily, comfortably pick a date by being honest and saying, hey, here's some times, do those work for you? And then place is so important. I know a lot of libraries and organizations like to have special rooms and sound studios where you can go to do the interview. Well, then it's not fun. Then it's not a conversation. We're all about conversation. So try to mutually agree upon a place where you can truly have a conversation. The person that you want to have a conversation with should be the person who feels the most comfortable. So where would she or he feel more comfortable?
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell the subtitle. It's having a good conversation because it's not about you, boo, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's not about you. So I love the choosing the time because you're treating it, you're being professional, actually, right?
Right.
And the place, I love the idea. You talked about smells. What do you mean by the bread is a perfect graphic for that? So why the smells?
Well, we know this in our intellectually in our minds, but we sometimes forget it. Science has told us over and over again that smell is the number one memory trigger. So why not use that to our advantage? Let's invite the person we want to have a conversation with into an environment where she or he has the opportunity to have some memory triggers. If we know they have a favorite dessert or a favorite drink, coffee or frappuccinos, or you have some military medals, sashes, anything that would emote a smell, because it is an awesome memory trigger. I like to remind people that even smells that we don't like could have positive memories associated with them. So I love the coffee, bread, pie, turkey. Some of the best conversations we've had are at dining room tables, around meals, even meals in restaurants. We have awesome conversations.
The best place.
Yeah. So why not try to replicate that in a conversation we want to have? But if you are in a place where maybe you don't enjoy the smell or the olfactory sense, but maybe it's someplace that is important for the person that you're interviewing. An example I like to use, and I hope it's not too much of a tortured example, Shamele, but I don't like musty, kind of closed up house smell.
Right.
It be moldy or mildew, but it's that musty smell. And I hope none of my in-laws get mad at me for this, but my father-in-law and mother-in-law's house was really musty smelling. So initially I really didn't like going over there, but oh my gosh, Shamele, in the picture dictionary of life, They're definition number one under perfect grandparents. So anytime I smell that horrible smell that I don't like, I think of Charlie Young, and it's like, oh my gosh, what an awesome
I
individual.
think of my great grandparents. That's so funny, Curt. Wow.
So remember to take advantage of smell as a memory trigger and use it to start the conversation and to keep the conversation going.
I love that. So arrange a time and a place. Oh, that's fantastic. Let's move on to
Sure.
preparing for the interview. So this is pretty key. Pretty
It
key.
is.
So what are some of your tips here for preparing for the interview?
So
Because I'm going to tell you, mine was definitely wrong. I had like a long list of questions. I got like multiple books that had lists of questions that you should ask people. And I was ready. And I was just like, boom, boom. That's how I prepared. So that was me. So I'm sure there's something better.
well, I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out, Shamele. But bottom line, if you're in the zone and a particular way is comfortable for you, go for it and try to learn with it. But if you're open to other ideas,
Yes,
I believe a more laid-back approach. Some people will be shaking their heads automatically already, saying, "Oh my gosh, this Witcher guy." I've gotten that a lot, but I've had a lot of success having conversations as opposed to having interviews. So tradition is you research the person forever and a day. You learn everything about her, about him, their entire life, all the details and biographies and newspapers. You like pre-interview rather than having a conversation, all kinds of other people. And then you kind of pour over this biography, and then you go and find the perfect questions, at least several dozen of them, so you don't, quote, run out of opportunities to engage with this person. That's a lot of work, and it really makes it more formal, and it takes it, in my opinion and my experience, takes it out of the arena of a conversation and makes it more rote. If you are more rote as a conversation participant, so will the other person. I'm going to give you exactly what I need to answer your specific question and nothing else. As family historians, do we want that?
No. So how do we change that behavior, Curt?
So two quick things. Number one, recording equipment. I'm a big fan of recording equipment here in the third decade of the 21st century. Taking notes is distracting for you and for the person being interviewed.
No note taking.
So record it. There are some great recorders out there. The one that you see on the image right now on the left, Roland, is a great bidirectional recorder. It takes a little bit of getting used to, so there's a small little learning curve. But whatever you do, you want to be comfortable with your recording equipment. I like to remind people, Shamele, that with our smart devices, there are many awesome apps out there that you can turn your smart device into a recording device, and that's just fine. But be comfortable with it. Don't fidget with it. Don't buy it tonight for a conversation you're going to have tomorrow. Get to know it, have it charged, have fresh batteries. One of the biggest conversation killers is when we start fidgeting with, commenting about, or like looking persistently at our recording device. It's telling the person that we want to have a conversation with, you thought you were important, but no, not so much. My recording equipment is more important than you are. And I know that's not what we're wanting to say, but that's the vibe.
You're kind of having that device between, you have something that's in between you and that person, which is the same as what you're kind of saying is the note taking. You're putting that tablet in between you and the person. And in order to have a conversation, it needs to be open, right?
Absolutely. And the second way to prepare is to think of a prime question, a beginning question. Okay, so you want to have a couple of questions that maybe you'll choose from at the last minute, depending on your mood, depending on the person you're having a conversation with, her mood or his mood. But you don't need a long list. If you want to read ahead of time StoryCorps is a great site. They have
I
great questions.
love StoryCorps.
And I think we have, we have a slide of some of their greatest questions. We should have a contest, Shamele. See how many people in like 11 minutes, I like odd numbers, in 11 minutes, how many thousands of questions you can come upon just by Googling, interviewing StoryCorps. I mean, easily in 11 minutes, you could have many thousands of questions. But the question you really want is one that looks like, feels like, low key, is as open as possible. You want to steer far away from yes and no, because if you go too far in that direction, that's what you will get.
Yes. No.
Yes. So I love
these questions. I want to answer. I want to sit down and journal these. These are great questions. How would you like to be remembered? When did you first fall in love? How has your life been different than you imagined? Who has been the kindest to you in your life? I mean, talking about open, this is like cavernously open.
Exactly. That's a great expression, Shamele. I like the two on the right.
Okay.
Because it really gets the person that you're having a conversation with to really go any way she or he wants with that. And as we're going to continue to talk about over these next couple of minutes, if we're really listening.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're ready for the next step. This, oh my goodness, this is so
if you're listening, you'll get your next question from the response to those beautiful opening questions. So I think our fourth step is what? Go with the flow.
Listen and go with the flow, because guess what? It's not about you, boo. Right, Curt?
Right. So I consider myself really blessed, Shamele. So I have the opportunity to be, and I use the word intentionally, interviewed a lot. And it's almost gotten hilarious. I guess that's the right word. Because half of the interviews, I'm just there. It's the interviewer who's talking and talking and talking and talking. It's like, well, this was nice hearing you talk. So just a couple quick tips, don't pontificate. In other words, what you just said, Shamele, it's not about you. It's not about you.
Come on, Curt. I want to hear you say boo. I think
about you, boo. Don't take time to validate their experience. Yeah. Their experience is theirs. And don't try to say, oh yeah, you went through a tornado, but I was in a flood. And It's like, no. It's their experience. It's his experience, her experience. It's not yours. Doesn't need to be. You can still, with your body language, be empathetic and be conversational. And that's what you want. But yeah, having the urge to talk all the time, to validate everything that she says, it's really a conversation killer. I was in 2 interviews last week. Seriously, I'll leave it as anonymous as that. One of them was an extended interview.
Oh, no.
In each of those interviews, I spoke for well less than 50% of the time. But yet I was the one that was invited to the conversation, if you will. Air quote.
It wasn't a conversation. Like, how long person had to hold the tea? Like, you just need to put the tea in the ground and step back and let Curt go, right?
So the whole thing about being engaged. I've listened to a few TED Talks. I like TED Talks as opposed to really long presentations. So, one of the least practiced skills, some people call it a science, I call it like a life skill, is listening. Listen, like just listen. A couple of people have said, most of us listen to respond. I thought, yes. Wow, that's pretty bright, because I'm not really listening to what you say, Shamele. I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to say, and hopefully you'll give me a good lead in, or you'll be quiet so I can say what I want to say.
That's a part of your being, and that's a part of your next set. That's your next one. Be engaged. The whole eye contact, actively listening. Or Kirk, you said one thing, and making eye contact, but you said something that we shouldn't do that I do a lot. I kind of do it a lot, and I have to figure out how not to do this. And this is kind of like repeating what they say. So can you, like you ask someone a question, they say something, and you repeat what they said because you want to make sure you captured it. And you said, recording device. Talk to me about that. I thought we were supposed to do that.
Right. Well, so for better or for worse, and I'm honored that you asked me, Shamele, to enjoy this time with you this afternoon. Experts say, repeat, make sure. It shows that you're interested. It shows that you're listening. There are a couple of experts that talk about things you can do to make someone think you're listening. And my whole thing is, why do you have to make someone think you're listening when you're actually listening? People get that. There are many interviewing experts, oral historians. There's a whole field of oral historians. There's degrees one can get. That's all good if that works for you. But I find that what works better is to have a conversation and to listen. Don't fidget with your devices. Don't fidget with this and that. Don't be thinking about, okay, I got to ask this next question. Yeah. Hey, I'm a pretty cool guy. I found this awesome question I'm going to ask. Whether it really fits the person or not, I want to ask that question. No, it's a conversation. If you could find the perfect street corner, that you would just run into someone and start talking. We've all had those experiences. That's what we're trying to replicate here. And we're not doing it because we have our little 1,000 list question because of 100-page biography. It's because we're having a conversation. So I'm not a fan of repeating things back. You have it on your device.
Yes.
It gets annoying. Being interviewed. It's like, what? Did
you say it gets annoying being interviewed?
No, for people getting interviewed.
Oh, gotcha.
Have you repeat it back. So you grew up in Jasper, Indiana. What's the person you're having a conversation with supposed to say? Yes, that's what I said. So where'd you go to school? Well, I went to school at Hemeter High School in Saginaw, Michigan. So you went to elementary school. And pretty soon the person that you're trying to have a conversation with, seriously, Shamele, checks out.
It sounds ridiculous when you do that, Curt. So thank you for giving me the best impersonation. So I'll never do that again. So let's move on so we're going to be engaged. We don't have to pretend to be engaged. Right. Step 6, and this is what I love, is use what you learn to do research, because that's the whole point. So you have really cool, tell us about what happened here. So tee it up before I share it.
I was having a great conversation with a first cousin who passed away way too soon. We always had great conversations, made greater by the fact that both our sets of parents, tried to keep us apart growing up. Still haven't figured that one out, but great conversations. And she just tipped me off to things like aha moments, like, I should have known that. Why didn't I know that? But it's like, our mothers went to Jasper High School in Jasper, Indiana. And it's like, yeah, and I know most high schools had a school paper, but it wasn't online, don't have a lot of connections. And it's like, she goes, you should look for your mother in the high school newspaper. It's like, okay, so didn't know it was called The Comet. And I know these are small little morsels, but this is life lived in the small places.
Yeah.
I got one of the best pictures of my mother I've ever seen, Doris Englert.
Gosh.
She won a writing contest. And then reading the article, you find out that this was her third try, freshman, sophomore, and senior. She did a writing contest. So that's wonderful history, wonderful context for, wow.
Dennis, she was in the next page too. Keep flipping, right?
Right. She was part of the Honor Society. She never told me that.
Really?
Nope. So I found out these little pieces because I had a great conversation with an awesome first cousin. And we can do
first cousins are the best cousins. That's what I always say.
Absolutely.
That is so cool. So let's share the steps that Kirk shared for having a good conversation. You won me over, Kirk. No more interviews. Step 1, choose a subject. Step 2, arrange a time and a place. If you want to interview me, bread and sweets work very well. Step 3, prepare for the interview. Step 4, listen and go with the flow, because guess what? It's not about you, boo. Step 5, be engaged. And step 6 is to use what you learn to do more research. That was great. Thank you so much. Here come the guys. Did you guys enjoy? Are you guys ready to have a conversation?
I feel like I've been to a therapy session.
Sorry, Michael.
and it's not going to help either.
It's that ship has sailed. No. It's important to, even if you're going to interview or ask those interviewee type questions, just to be engaged and listen. Mainly because then you can follow up with intelligent stuff.
Instead of just following your list, you follow the trail of the conversation.
Right. You can, if you've got a list, you can always go back to it if you got a few things you want to get straight. But no, it's.
And Denise Payne says to seize the opportunity.
Yes.
I wish I had talked to so many people who are now gone, especially since I've lived so far away from family for so long. So, yeah, so important. So let's do our question of the day, which is, what is a family story that you thought was not true, but you found out it was actually true? And who wants to go first? Because I don't know if I have one, because all of my family stories are. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, technically, it's a story from my ex-wife's family, but it's the best example I have. Yeah, we were looking for her mother's side, and the name was Tobin in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. And so, well, to say it in the form you did, what we got from her mother was that the ancestor was a Polish Jew named Tobinski. And my then wife at the time and I, laughed at that because we just knew that Tobin had to be Irish or Welsh, something from the British Isles. Well, darned if when we finally got around to pulling his marriage certificate, that Anthony Tobin was actually Anton Dubinsky. And, almost a dead-on match to the crazy story that we had.
Michael, I think you had one. We're almost at our time.
Well, my grandmother told me she could remember being baptized, and they were members of the denomination that practiced infant baptism. And I thought, Grandma, you didn't remember when you were baptized. You were Lutheran. No, you don't remember that. It just happens when you're small. And I found the baptismal record. The short version of this is she and her 2 younger siblings were all baptized on the same day on their parents' farm for whatever reason, and she would have been about 5 or 6 years old. So she remembered it. She wasn't, but I really thought she was dreaming when she said I remember it. And I'm like, yeah, I remember mine too, whatever, but not as funny as Jim's, but it makes a point.
I remember how lonely I was before I got Jim and Michael. Curt, thank you so much for being on the show today. Everyone, go out and have some good conversations and tick off your ancestors. Have a great, fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.